Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale. Now, we recently had a surprise balance change update. I had a video with Orange Juice talking about all the changes. One thing we didn't discuss were the cards that weren't on the list. So in today's video, I want to talk about 4 cards that I think should have probably been balanced in the most recent balance changes. We're also going to speculate on the strength of the Magic Archer and kind of look into the reasoning that Supercell provided for the surprising nerf of the night at the end of this episode. But for now, let's hop into the 4 cards and talk a little bit about why I was so surprised that they weren't balanced. Number 1 is going to be Goblin Hut. Now, I've kind of flip-flopped on this one. Initially, I could see the reason, at least in my head, why the Goblin Hut wasn't nerfed. The reason being is because the use and the win rates of the Goblin Hut had been on a very, very steady decline since the previous nerf to the Goblin Hut in the other balance update about a month ago now. So I kind of read that as, okay, that nerf seems to be working. However, a bunch of pro players, including Trainer Lewis and Surgical Goblin, they kind of went publicly and said, no, Goblin Hut is a big issue. And you know what? Since then, the stats have backed them up. Goblin Hut is back way on the rise in the last 2 days, and I see that trend continuing. Goblin Hut is so strong right now, and its win and use rates were largely masked. The declining use rates that I was looking at were kind of a red herring, and they were symptomatic of the not of the lack of strength, but rather the popularity of the Mega Knight Zap Bait deck that didn't include the Goblin Hut. Everybody was shifting towards that deck, and it kind of reflected as diminishing win and use percentages on the Goblin Hut. So Goblin Hut is number 1 on my list. Needed a nerf. Now it needs a nerf, and it's probably going to be really annoying in the coming month or 2, unless they have another surprise round of balance changes. Number 2 on the list is Lightning. Have we ever gotten a reason exactly on why Lightning was nerfed? I mean, people say Hog Lightning was out of control, but I went back and I looked, and the win rates weren't as staggering as one might think with Hog Lightning. And even Golem Lightning was on the decline at the time of the nerf. One of the reasons that Lightning was already on the decline at the time of the unprecedented nerf to Lightning, I think that was 2 or 3 balance updates ago, was because 3 Musketeer players had learned how to block Lightning. They learned to use Battle Ram. Furthermore, with the introduction of Tornado and the popularity of Rocket, you didn't really need Lightning anymore. Tornado Rocket couldn't be blocked, so Tornado and Rocket really changed the game in a lot of ways. So we're left with a Lightning that's rarely used. It can still be effective in some decks, and hey, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking maybe with the Magic Archer, it will be more viable, another 4 elixir troop, but you know what? I still don't think it will be viable because Magic Archer can die to poison or fireball just the same. So I still think that Lightning probably needs to be buffed back the same radius where it used to be. I don't know. I don't know if it would be something that Supercell would do, go back on the same exact nerf and basically undo it and make it a buff. But to me, at least, Fireball and Poison are much better options at cheaper options as well at 2 less elixir. And at the same elixir, I think that Rocket is much better in this meta and in the game in general. So I'm surprised about Lightning, guys. Number 3 on our list is going to be Dark Goblin. I'm not sure if a lot of people maybe expected me to put the next 2 cards on the list, but I'm kind of worried about him, okay? So Dark Goblin. I worry about Dark Goblin, and I love Dark Goblin. I think he's one of the coolest cards in the game, just conceptually. I love his fire rate. It's the fastest in the game by a good margin. I mean, the only fire rate that comes close, it's the swing rate, actually, is the Lumberjack at, I think, 1/10 of a second slower than the Dark Goblin. So with so much spam going around, the Dark Goblin, it just became victim of all the decks out there building in plenty of spam protectors and counters in their decks. I mean, think about it. With the advent of soon-to-be Magic Archer, along with Hunter, We have Royal Ghost, Dark Prince getting buffed, Mega Knight introduced to the game. There's been a lot of splash damage cards that have entered into the game since the poor Dark Goblin came to the arena, and poor Dark Gob only got one buff quite a while ago. So I think he could probably use another buff just to keep him up with the meta. You know, it'd be nice to see him competitively, something we don't really see right now. So I would give the Dark Goblin a small buff as well. Speaking of buffs to cards we might not expect, before we get to my fourth and final card, I do want to give a quick honorable mention to Heal, Barbarian Hut, Elite Barbs, and Royal Giant. Elite Barbs, Royal Giant, Heal, and Barbarian Hut all have anemic win rates and usage rates at tournament level standard and top 200 gameplay. That means competitively, they're no good. They suck. So they deserve a big buff. However, all of those cards, Heal, Barbarian Hut, Elite Barbs, and Royal Giant, jeez, Ash, get the right one, dude. All of those cards, to me, if you were to buff them, which clearly they needed, it would run amok in other areas, whether it be over-leveled common at tournament level standard, or at ladder, or at tournament level standard with just annoying Barbarian Hut meta with Goblin Hut. We don't want that. And Heal, I don't know. I'm still of the thought that Heal probably should have never been introduced to the game, and who knows, maybe Supercell agrees with me by the fact that its win rates and use rates have been rather anemic, and they haven't done anything about it. So that's why I didn't include any of those cards. Essentially, I don't want to make them powerful right now because I don't think they're great cards for the game. And then Hog, I know if I don't talk about Hog, a lot of people will probably be upset. So I want to give my quick thoughts on Hog, and that is not very great right now at tournament level standard. Ladder, he's doing his thing. Almost 30% usage rates across the entire threshold of all the arenas. However, I think that nerfing a card that's not great at tournament level standard, A, and B, it's like the free-to-play player's best win condition, best option on ladder. I just don't think it's a good idea. So that's why I'm of the camp that Hog does not need a nerf right now. I'm sure some people will be happy, some people will be very irate that's my opinion. But guys, it's only a game. My fourth card is actually Bowler. I do feel like Bowler definitely needs a buff. Now, Bowler's not an awful card, but again, we have to think back. A few months after Bowler was introduced to the game, they introduced the Executioner. A few months later, the Tornado. Now, for 5 Elixir, same class of rarity, Epic. Executioner is just so much better than the Bowler, especially with the introduction of Tornado. Now I can keep going. Now Dark Prince and Prince are extremely viable in the game, so is Battle Ram. In all 3 of those cards, the Bowler can't even stop their charge. So I would recommend buffing the Bowler, keeping the Dark Prince and the Battle Ram a little bit in check, that spam meta as well, and allowing him to reset their charge. I think that makes him a defensive monster again. I went back to all the balance changes, and I noticed that Bowler has only been touched once, and it was to change his elixir cost from 6 to 5, and it was also to give him a big nerf. I mean, it was a buff, but they nerfed his HP and his DPS to compensate for the cheaper elixir cost. Since then, the poor fella, you know, all they've done to him is deepen his voice. That's not a joke, it's true. I noticed in one of the patch notes they deepened his bye-bye or whatever that is, right? So anyway, let's talk about the Magic Archer before I let you guys go today. So the Magic Archer, I think, all stats look, except for one stat, which we'll get to, like he's going to be the next OP card again. Like we're going to be dealing with another Night Witch, another Royal Ghost, another OP legendary card. However, I am tempering my optimism or maybe my pessimism about him being so OP by the fact that he can die at 4 Elixir, costs 4 Elixir, and he will die handily to Poison and Fireball. So I think that might keep him in check. He doesn't have a lot of HP, unlike the E-Wiz, the Musketeer, what else, Ice Wizard. He won't he won't stay alive and continue to help on defense after that fireball comes down. He'll just die. So, I think that might keep him, again, a little bit in check. He has a 7-tile range, but he has an 11-tile range on his magic arrow that flies through his opponents, through the enemies, and does damage to every single troop. Even if they're the 5th or 6th troop in line, think of it like an executioner's axe that just keeps on going for 11 tiles and then doesn't come back. So it's a really unique card. I like the card. And the most notable thing for me, besides that interesting magic arrow mechanic, is actually the fact that he, I really, really like his fire rate. His fire rate is 3 times faster than a princess, 0.3 of a second slower than a lumberjack swing. This guy's like a machine gun. Pretty crazy, right? That's a very fast fire rate, a very long range, especially when you give the 11-tile range of the magic arrows. That's 2 more tiles than the princess. So if he's 2 tiles away from the bridge, he can feasibly hit the opponent's princess tower with his magic arrow. He has a lot of potential. Again, I'm just tempering, my expectations on him due to, of course, the fireball damage, right? So that's how I feel about Magic Archer. We'll see when he enters the game. One quick disclaimer: there's a lot of private server footage out there with the Magic Archer. I mean, guys, I can't tell you to watch that or to not watch that. However, I will warn you, that is not the Magic Archer that you're watching. It's him, like the avatar or whatever, but all the stats are different. Those private builds use several clients updates ago, oftentimes, and even the most recent client updates don't have all the stats programmed correctly, so you're just not watching what he'll actually be like in terms of an accurate indicator of his strength. So just a kind of disclaimer there on that. And then the last thing is the official Supercell response to the Knight. Why did they nerf the Knight, man? A free-to-play friendly common card. It bums me out because I'm always trying to look out for free-to-play players and casual players who just aren't dumping a ton of money into the game. So seeing a common card unexpectedly get nerfed does kind of raise an eyebrow. However, their explanation that they took the time to put on Reddit, I actually like this communication. I wish they'd do it more often. It was great. I think it was Tim by the y'all, judging by the y'all in the in the Reddit post. But basically, he explained that 2 reasons for the nerf. Number 1 is he thinks that the win rate and the usage rates, again, kind of like the Goblin Hut that we discussed earlier, guys, were largely masked by the popularity of the Mega Knight. And now that they've nerfed him to oblivion, not really, but they gave him a big nerf, right? An unprecedented nerf in Clash Royale, according to OJ. I think that they thought that the Knight was a lot better than his stats would indicate, okay? So with that in mind, and the secondary goal of making the Valkyrie and the Mini P.E.K.K.A more viable again in competitive play, they decided to nerf the Knight. Again, I see the logic there. It does make sense. I don't know why you wouldn't extend that logic into cards like the Goblin Hut, but either way, and you could probably make a case for Ice Golem needing a nerf under that logic as well, even though I don't want that. But it is kind of curious, but at the end of the day, it does suck to see a common win condition getting a nerf. However, I hope that Valkyrie is competitively viable. It would be nice to see her viable. I like the card, So as long as things remain fresh, I am optimistic about the meta. And then, this video does sound a little like kind of being a crybaby. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I must say that overall, I did actually think that the balance changes were great. And I love that they were more frequent to keep the meta kind of finely tuned. So I hope they continue with that trend. And overall, I did actually agree with the balance changes they did make, except for maybe the Knight. I was surprised by that. But hey, you can't get everything, right? You can't get everything you want, Ash. So guys, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know what your opinions on the cards that I mentioned are in the comments below. Check out my YouTube partner, Bren Chong, in the description below. He's doing daily giveaways now on Twitter, all kinds of fun stuff. So check him out. Guys, thanks so much for watching. And as always, take care, guys.